I feel myself living in the eternal presence of God. God is not linked to time and space. No. More and more, you see, little by little, I'm vanishing.
Zurich, 2003. A 44-year-old monk lies suffocating in an intensive care unit. He's blind, entirely stripped of his physical strength, and can no longer speak. With his final ounce of energy, his trembling hand writes a desperate, defiant note on a scrap of paper.
Sitting here, in the silence of this mountain cell, the mystery reveals a truth that could silently heal a 1,000-year-old wound. Before we enter into this sacred memory, bless us that our eyes of our heart may be open to the breath of the Spirit.
Amen.
In 1980, Graziano left every comfort of the modern world to find the forgotten solitude of the desert, here in these mountains. The Holy Fathers speak of the heart as a spiritual eye. When this simple young mechanic first climbed this mountain and stood at your doorstep, what did your heart recognize in him?
That was, let's say, it was in the beginning of 81. In 80, end of 1980, I arrived here myself. He heard about this and he wanted to visit me immediately, but nobody knew where I was staying. And he said to his mother, I will not have peace unless I have not found this father. And then one of his colleagues, he was not a mechanic anymore. He was studying in kind of nursery. He became an assistant to old people, and said, oh, I know where he is. I helped to bring up here his belongings. And so he, let's say, half a year later, he arrived here. And the first impression which I had was, let's say, ambiguous, but in a good sense, because he had his hair shaved, he had a long beard, he always had a long black beard already when he was younger. Then he was 22 years old, and a little wooden cross, type of St. Francis, you see, like a T, no? And a golden earring here. I said, this is a strange mixture. On one hand, a friar, a Franciscan brother, on the other hand, a young man, as many are nowadays. And so my conclusion was that he had not yet found his way. He was searching for something. And in fact, he, on one hand, he wanted to become, let's say, a monk, but he did not yet know what it was, because here he never met traditional monasticism. In Ticino there is none anymore, or it was hundreds of years, but only these friars, Franciscans and Capuchin, and they are disappearing now too. There almost nobody left. And on the other hand, he wanted to marry and have a lot of children. And so what he maybe did not know, because his mother taught me this after his death only, that at his birth she consecrated him to the Mother of God. Maybe he didn't know this. No. I wonder. So, he was a typical young man of our times, and of those times, because time is passing. And then from this first visit, he came more or less regularly. He was already working in old people home, and when he had a little spare time, he came here, he ran, see, at the door, came in, he sat down, and he taught me something, asked something, and then he disappeared. I didn't know his family name, I didn't know his phone number, I had no idea where he lived. For 5 years, like this. And during these years, at a certain moment, he asked me to be his spiritual father. Before, he was relying on his parish priest, because he very much engaged in parish life from his youth. He was a reader in the church and so on. He took care of the, let's say, disabled people, young criminals, drug-addicted young people, always of his age, you see. He had always a very sensitive heart for the smallest, the most unfortunate. And during these 5 years, he had a very let's say, very elementary formation, a school only, and he spoke quite well French, I must say. And he read a lot of books, but almost everything that was from the life of Milarepa to a famous handbook on Orthodoxy. All it was read and underlined and so on. No. Yes, and after the end of these 5 years, when he was 27, he asked me whether I would accept that he comes here for a month to see whether he, to improve his monastic vocation. And I said, 1 month? Everybody can do this. It must be difficult. 1 year. He was visibly shocked, but he was too proud to say that was too much. And he said, that's what I wanted, but I didn't dare to ask you. So he came, and he never left for 18 years, you see, because he lived here 18 years. And he discovered here, through this, the contact with, I was alone, as you see, the old monastic tradition, which he did not know because here in the West, it doesn't exist anymore. Though we have very, very old monasteries. In Switzerland, we have 2 main abbeys. One has 1,100 years, even more, and the other one even 1,400 years of uninterrupted existence. But this was not in Ticino, you see, and he didn't speak German, it's the German part. And so he became acquainted with primitive monastic spirituality. And that was not easy, because as many young people, maybe even today, he at first looked for the wisdom of the East, but Far East. Nah? And he even had been in India with his friends. Later he regretted it very much. And so in the beginning, while praying, he was sitting in the classical way as the yogis in India are sitting on the ground and so on. And I said, look, Graziano, that was his Baptist name. If you do not pray the Christian way, you will never understand the mystery of Christian prayer. Every religion has its own traditions, which correspond to its teachings, let's say, its philosophy. And we too, as Christians. And everything has a deep meaning, even if everybody does not know it. He would not give in. For a whole year, we were struggling. And finally, okay, you can say he obeyed, or he said, okay, I will abandon my practices now and pray a Christian way. And then it was like as if a wall was breaking down in front of him, and he understood. And then he asked me, you must write this down, because we are so many who are in the illusion that we can practice something and believe something else. And reluctantly, because these things for me were obvious, I started writing my biggest success, so to say, Earthen Vessels. It was written on his request, and it exists in 10 languages. And it is this little book, which is always reprinted in the different languages, sometimes translated in new ones. I know 10 translations, but maybe there are more. This made me very well known in Orthodoxy before I became myself formally Orthodox, because Orthodox believers understood immediately this is our authentic tradition, even if we forgot many aspects, you see. And one Romanian lady even wrote me, what a beautiful apology of Orthodoxy. It was not written for Orthodox believers. Once an abbot bought a pile of 10 copies to sell them in the monastery. Said, here we have everything together what we are practicing. That's very comfortable. No? I had the approval of a now sanctified Athonite elder, Petronie Tanase of the Romanian Skit, and so on. I was still a Catholic formally. And now here I'm touching a point which is very important for him and for me. I remained, no, let's go back. I have a PhD in ancient history, so historically, chronologically. When I was a young student, already a monk, simple monk in Bonn, I already wanted to become Orthodox. I knew Orthodoxy in Greece in 1961, and I became convinced that this is the true apostolic church. And I asked a famous bishop whether he would receive me in the Orthodox Church. He said, okay, come to my metropolia and we will see. So that was abroad. I traveled over there. He was not there. He never apologized, and I never had any contact with him. And that is typical. We are in the beginning of the 60s, you see. In these years, a conversion to the Orthodox Church was something absolutely exceptional. And the Orthodox clergy, in fact, was not interested in this. One of my co-students, the later famous Christos Yamaras, you should know him.
I know him, yes.
He even strongly insisted that he and my confrère, we should not become Orthodox, because our vocation was to suffer the drama of the schism between East and West in our flesh, he said. You must suffer this. Yes. A strange vision. Anyway, when I came here in 1980, I put the whole question under square brackets, because I did not succeed in the 60s, but here I could live the, let's say, out of the fullness of Orthodox tradition. I was free. And my life, my rule, and so on, I was alone for 5 years, was copied on the life of the Desert Fathers. That was the reason why I came here. If I were a Greek, I would go immediately to Mount Athos, live in a little skit, maybe become a disciple of Elder Joseph or one of his disciples, and everything was fine. But here in the West, this is not possible. And to become Orthodox, as you have seen, was in those years difficult. And Father Raphael, in these years, he quickly became convinced that we should become Orthodox, because living the same life, he felt that something was lacking. We had no Eucharist communion. And then I said, calm down, please. It is not so easy as you imagine, because I already made my bad experiences. But then things totally changed in the last, let's say, maybe 10 years, even less. Because as you know, especially you are Americans, that people, young people, especially young men, teenagers, they rush to the Orthodox churches. It's the same here in Germany. It's now everywhere the same. And they say, I want to be baptized. Because already their parents were not baptized anymore, maybe already their grandparents. Because the Catholic Church, for not to speak about the Protestant Church, which is here in Switzerland too, disappearing. Within 20 years, it will not exist anymore. And the Orthodox Church, Russian Church in Lugano, is in the building of a Protestant church which died out.
In Melita. Yeah.
Yes, Melita. Nobody left, and they sold it. No. And So I'm an old man, as you know, 86 now. I've seen a lot of things in my life, and evolutions which I never could imagine in my youth, in a positive and an extremely negative sense too. And I wonder what that means. Because I always remember when I was a young student, already a monk in Bonn, we had quite a lot of Russian friends of our age from the Zarubezhnaya Cerkov, Russian church in exile. We went to the liturgy, we sang in the choir, and so on. So I was acquainted with the clergy, with the bishop too, an old archbishop. And so I always remember it was in an archimandrite from Jordanville, Konstantin Zaitsev, already an old man. And he said that in the last times, the hearts of those Christians, non-Orthodox Christians, in which there is still a spark of true life for Christ, they will all rush to the Orthodox Church. And that's what we are seeing here. We received already a lot of people in the Orthodox Church here. And so you see, the situation when I was young, and Father Raphael died 23 years ago, situation was totally different. Completely.
When illness systematically took his strength, Father Raphael, his cell, and finally his very voice, it seemed like a total tragedy for a man whose entire life was a liturgical praise. How did that absolute silence become his truest monastic calling?
He accepted, so Father Raphael was born in 58, and he died in 2003. And he had a disease from his youth, nobody knows exactly, which is called sarcoidosis. You don't die from this, but with other complications later, that took his life. And he was very young still. And he suffered from other diseases, always lung, the respiratory ways, for at least 6 years. And for a young man, it is difficult to accept his quite early death, you see. And he struggled a lot. I accompanied him, of course, step by step. In these years, when we lived here together, he became, I must say, a true monk according to the image of our Desert Fathers. When the fathers said he didn't read anything else, only this literature, from the old church or from more recent modern Orthodox literature, monastic literature. And his English was very weak, French was quite good, and so I had to summarize for him certain books. We received here, I do not even remember when this started, the publications of a Platina. And
Seraphim Rose, I mean.
yes, Seraphim Rose, but he was already dead in those times. He died in 68, something like this. And Further, German Panajensky, even he visited us here. They sent all their publications, their calendar, and their Orthodox word, this monthly, which I appreciate very much. And there are always lives of monks of the past or confessors, martyrs of the Soviet period. And I summarized this. That was the main topic of our conversations. I even translated for him, or dictated, a translation into Italian of a book which in those years did not yet exist in any, neither in French nor in Italian. It was the Practicos of Evagrios with my spiritual commentary. Now in French it is out of print and they sell it on internet for €500 the copy. Oh. Yes. I said, make a reprint, you will make money. Anyway, it did not exist, and so I dictated him this for his private use. This book still exists. And then once a year, he read it again from A to Z, and then came with his questions, his famous questions. I still find in books which he read little sheets of paper, ask PG, ask Father Gabriel, so, page 20 and so on. No. And the same with these Practicos. On page 20, you write this. And on page 75, this. How does this fit together? His whole life was, let's say, our life was transmission of the wisdom of the Holy Fathers. That was the only thing he was interested in. And that is the reason why I wrote these little booklets, you see. And he put it to practice, literally. And the argument, we are not living in the 4th century, had no value in his eyes. 2 examples, little examples, there are many other. One day he asked me, do you have by chance a little box like this? Yes, maybe, but for what is this good? He said, he read and he put to practice that a monk who spoke too easily and too much always put a little stone in his mouth to remind that keep quiet. And when he went to the village, there was still a little shop, and that doesn't exist anymore. He put always this stone in his book. He was a son of this, let's say, this country here. He spoke only dialect. And for the people of these humble people of the village, he was always the boy. No? And, okay, this little box still exists with a stone. Then one day I opened the door and he was kneeling on the threshold and kissing the threshold. I was thunderstruck and softly closed the door again. He read somewhere, kiss the threshold of your elder. Would you believe that this is possible in our times? Yes. And because he took that seriously, he became an equal to the first fathers. The only one I ever met, I must say. Wow. And after his saintly death, I knew that something, I knew how he died, I prepared him. Unfortunately, he would not die when he was prepared, but because the medical doctors, of course, they would lay hand on him, and at the end even they would reanimate him when he was already dead. Would you believe that? Reanimate for 20 minutes. And the nurse, a Serbian lady, quite a strong person, said it was a horror. And when I came to the hospital, he was there, paralyzed, and the body little by little was growing because he could not evacuate the liquid anymore, and so the kidneys did not work anymore. And then the doctors quickly finished. You see, no reaction. And we have not seen them anymore. No reaction. He was crying. And I sat down to his side, took his hand, and started reading the Psalter. So he calmed down and stopped weeping. And then when I can show you, you can take a picture from this if you want later. When he was dead, I left him here in Ticino and went to the Benedictine Abbey, where he was put to the sepulchre. No? And he looked always alike. You will take a photo from this. Our medical doctor took this photo, thanks heaven, because who is so quick-minded that he does? That was the last opportunity. No? And later, a monk, he was a friend of Father Raphael, said when we brought him on our shoulders to the church, I knew that we are carrying a saint. And a very respected monk, Jerome of the monastery, in any Orthodox monastery he would be a starets, but this starets in Occident do not exist and never existed. He said this prophetic word, the day of his funeral. I am convinced that his true activity starts only today. Would you say that normally the day of the funeral of a maybe beloved person, yes, but that his true activity starts only today when he is no more here? And that's what happened. Immediately, people rushed from everywhere and asked, where is the tomb of Father Raphael? Though during his lifetime he was an extremely hidden, he was very shy, hidden person. But when he always hid behind my shoulders, my back. And the day of his death, he went in full light. Everybody knew him all of a sudden. And that's the reason why the abbot asked me to write something about him. I will show you this. And they printed these images because people didn't know anything about him. They only knew he helps a lot. You see, this exists in a smaller format too. And so the monks could give these images and this little pamphlet, if you want, to people who wanted to know who was this Father Raphael. No? And then when, of course, I was already Orthodox, I had an icon painted, and people started to copy this icon. You see, recently, a lady who is a painter, this is a detail. The icon itself is larger. No? He has a cross in his hand because he was long suffering. No?
It's the icon in the exonarthex.
Yes, you have seen it. Yes, that is a larger. The real one is in the sacristy. No, it's smaller. And, in fact, his real activity started that day. So, healings, miraculous visions, and so on. From some of these miracles, I'm a testimony myself.
You record a beautiful moment on Mount Athos, when an Eastern monk wept at the sight of you and Father Raphael, seeing the undivided church alive in your eyes. In that very same year, I think it was 1994,
94.
my own footsteps were walking the trails of that same holy mountain, a young man completely unaware of your existence. Looking back at how the Holy Spirit moves separate souls simultaneously across the world, do you feel that the restoration of Christ's broken body is already quietly being woven in the dark, long before we even realize it?
The unbroken church of the Christ and his apostles is the Orthodox Church. So, therefore, everybody rushes now to the Orthodox Church. They say in America in the last 2 years, more than 100,000. And long time, I was, let's say, my most sacred wish was that we could, let's say, that in some way the undivided church, you will see here the title of this little.
Ungeteiligte Kirche.
Yes.
Ja, ich weiß.
You have already seen
Hab's
it.
gelesen, ja.
Yes, okay. And, but as I understand it, at the end of my life, this is an illusion. Ecumenism is an illusion. In the beginning, it was a purely Protestant movement, very honorable. It was born in Africa when, African background, let's say, when the different Protestant denominations became aware that they were preaching the gospel side by side by different churches, which could not reconcile, and even today they are not reconciled. And they said, but this is not normal. Christ founded his church, but not, as in America, 45,000 denominations. And so the ecumenical movement was born. The Orthodox Church participated in this, not because these theologians thought that we must find or recompose unity, but to give testimony of the true apostolic tradition. Catholic Church never participated officially because of his huge proportions. She would, let's say, crush all the others, but they are very actively too. But when I was young, ecumenism was prohibited. And it is only after Vatican II that this movement became popular in the Catholic Church, and then even popes and so on promoted it in their way. No, the only one holy Catholic, so universal apostolic church, is the Orthodox Church. It never disappeared. All the others split from it. The famous Greek schism in 1004 is the Roman schism. The Romans split from the union, but not for the first time, by the way, and not the last time. And I once received a young Italian into the Orthodox Church. His wife was Russian, and they had done one kid. Now they have several. Very nice people. And I was not aware, because they didn't tell me, that his parents were present. And when we left the church, his parents were waiting there. And a little bit embarrassed, I said to his father, "An humble worker." So now your Leonid, became Orthodox. Attention, this does not mean that he entered another church, but just that he turned back to the church of the beginning of the apostle. Then this humble man said, "Yes, we know that the Orthodox Church is the church of the beginnings." Yes, he was not a theologian. God knows who illuminated him, but this is the very simple truth. This I feel the necessity to say this here. As you know, on YouTube, there are tons of channels of the people who give testimony how and why I became Orthodox. Mainly men, young men even. Really, tons of them. No? But all of them insist on the fact that in their denomination, as you say, in America, they met a lot of good, sincere people. And why not? The gospel is a very strong yeast, you see. It can ferment any human life. And so I myself, I didn't make any bad experience in the Catholic Church. I just became Orthodox because I wanted to be in Eucharistic communion with the one Holy Catholic and Orthodox Church, Apostolic Church, not only be a guest, let's say, and confess a creed where I could subscribe without restriction. This, with the Catholic faith, I could not anymore. I studied very thoroughly the question of filioque. And I said, these contradictions I cannot accept. You know that Pope Leo III, at the time of Charlemagne, he refused to change a word in the creed. He said, I do not have the authority to do so. No, it is in prohibitis. It is absolutely prohibited. No? And he didn't have the power to impose to the emperor to restore the authentic text of the creed, because politically he depended on Charlemagne. He had a lot of enemies. But he did something very memorable. He had made 3 silver shields, with 2 for St. Peter and 1 for St. Paul in Rome, with the text of the creed in Greek and in Latin. St. Paul only in Latin. And thanks to Peter Abelardus, the philosopher, we know exactly which text, because he copied it in St. Paul. It is exactly the creed which Rome accepted at Chalcedon, word by word. It's a clumsy Latin, and you cannot sing this text, you see. And that was the reason why Paullinus of Aquileia made a new translation, the one they use still today, which is its music, no? A very elegant Latin. No? Just an example. Anthropisanda. In Latin it was humanatum. Ugly. In new translation, et homo factus est. Wow. And in this moment, but before Vatican II, when we sing et homo factus est, everybody fall on its knees. To start with the priest on the altar and the whole community. And for a moment, this is to symbolize the descent of the divine word in our human condition of counseled, of course. No? I said, I cannot accept this. I cannot accept that when the Latin monks of Jerusalem, who started singing, chanting the creed in the Mass, the creed is not primitively a text of the Holy Liturgy or Holy Mass. It is reserved to baptism. It was introduced to the liturgy only later. They were astonished. We do not sing the creed normally, but they listen. Wow. And they changed even the text. There was a big scandal. And these monks said, by the way, but our Holy Father Benedict in his rule and so on has the filioque. This is not true. But it is in his life, written by Pope Gregory the Great. Et Spiritus Sanctus, quia Patre procedit et Filio. When Pope Zacharias, the last Greek pope in Rome, translated the life of Saint Benedict from Pope Gregory the Great into Greek and made it very popular among the hesychasts later on Mount Athos and elsewhere, he corrected the text in a very elegant way, because for a Greek and for Greeks, that was not acceptable. So you have Pope Leo, who is considered as a saint too, Leo III, you have Pope Zacharias, nothing to be done. They continue, but once an error entered, you will not cancel it anymore. So this, at the end, I could not accept. And this is just an example. No? I want to subscribe with both hands to the creed of the Church and not put things under square brackets, you see, as many Catholics today do. They put a lot of things under square brackets so they can survive, because they cannot subscribe anymore to what is going on in their church. And you may believe me or not, I see a lot of Catholics here who are asking for advice and for help, priests and monks too, because they are desperate. But these are really the last times, you see. Maybe the Ecumenism Constantine Zaitsev was right.
Yeah, maybe he was right. Father, forgive me, this is a bit of a long question, but there's an invisible alignment of the spirit that defies all human logic. In 2010, you formally entered the Orthodox Church, though I realize in your heart you were always Orthodox.
That's what the bishops in Moscow taught me. One said, you have always been one of ours, how do you say? No.
To be sure.
Yes.
Sicherlich.
And the other one, you have always been Orthodox, but now we have Eucharist, the communion. And that's what I was looking for, you see. I didn't want to be for the rest of my days honored guest.
The very same year of 2010, Father, was actually the first year that I touched this Swiss soil. And by 2013, the Holy Spirit brought me here to Ticino to help resurrect a parish, the Church of the Epiphany in Lugano, that did not have a regular priest for about 40 years.
Yes, yes.
We did not even meet, you and I, face to face until 2024.
Yes, in fact.
Yet earlier this year, when you were miraculously preserved from that terrifying fall on the stairs.
Here.
Yes.
Outside.
Up the
Yes.
stone stairs.
Backwards. On my back, would we imagine? Have a look on these 3 high steps.
It became obvious, at least to me, that an unseen veil of unceasing prayer holds this mountain. Do you feel that all of us here, the living and the departed, are breathing the very same air of the Holy Spirit unfolded in that single living body where Father Raphael continues to shield and watch over the faithful?
I'm convinced that it is like this. And I do not know whether I told you this detail, but normally a person would fall like a stone, no? Like this. But I strongly felt that I was sustained by invisible hands and lay down, you see. I didn't break any bone. I could break my neck, my whatever. No? I was unable to get up myself, but I'd broken nothing. When I taught this to him, I attribute this to my guardian angel and to Raphael. And I take care of a nun, Orthodox nun in Italy. She almost died during the COVID epidemic. And I know from experience, other examples, that people who have been with one foot in one world and with the other foot in the other world, they see things, they hear things which we do not see and hear. And she always said and even wrote down that I see Father Raphael constantly at your side. And in the Russian translation of his little life, which is, I wrote a full life, but this will be published, if ever, after my death only. Probably, maybe even earlier, because it is very personal, you see, because for 18 years, he assisted me continuously, and then when he became ill, I assisted him. He died in my hands, so to say, in the hospital. In this Russian version, which is for our believers here, there is an epilogue at the end, which I wrote as an Orthodox, and where I question myself whether a person who died outside of the visible communion of the Orthodox Church may be considered as a saint. And I give the answer myself, but it is only a suggestion, of course. No? Yes, because as St. Gregory, the theologian, and St. Augustine, almost at the same time, same period, said, St. Gregory, many seem to be in the church, but they do not belong to us. And there is quite a lot outside of the church, but they are ours. And the great theologian George Florovsky said, the mystical boundaries of the church do not coincide with the canonical boundaries. They are larger. And we had recently the first visit of our metropolitan, new bishop, and I asked him, I gave him this little life and so on. I said, what do you believe? Raphael might be considered as an Orthodox saint, though he did not formally die in the communion. I said, absolutely. Yes, but you can be sure to be in the fullness of the truth only in the Orthodox Church. No? But outside you find a lot of people, and I know a lot of people who in fact belong to us. They are excellent Orthodox believers in their practice and in their faith too. But for many reasons, and probably because of our laziness too, they do not join the Orthodox Church. The problem is here that these Orthodox churches here in Western Europe, in France it's a little bit different, are of quite recent origin. And in the beginning they're very ethnic, you see. And but it seems that it's less and less an obstacle to these young people who do not understand the word of Church Slavonic in the beginning. No. But they come in our churches in Zurich too and say, I want to be baptized. Okay, we prepare them, and so little by little they should, of course, grow in a German Orthodox Church, a Swiss, an Italian Orthodox Church, a French. In France, that already exists. There are parishes where everything is in French. In the old cathedral of Rue d'Arru, in the church itself, all in Slavonic. In the crypt, all in French. You see? And so it becomes easier for them.
Father, when a soul completely dissolves its human will into the divine, as Father Raphael did when he wrote down his final words with his fading strength, he said, thank God for everything.
That's what is on his icon, too.
The tragic divisions of history seem to simply melt away. Sitting here with you now, in the silence of this cell, the uncreated warmth of Christ is unmistakable. In the end, does his life reveal that we all encounter God in the deep mystery of his great mercy and economia, proving that the path to the undivided root is open to every heart that fully surrenders to the Spirit? Does his sacrifice ultimately lead us straight into the true beauty and mystery of Holy Orthodoxy, where the uncorrupted, ancient fullness remains alive and unchanged?
Yes. His life is a testimony of the truth of their words. And by God's will, it was not possible in these years to convert formally to the Orthodox Church. And I must even, to be honest, even at the end, when I just was putting the last step, I at first relied on a metropolitan of another church. He wasn't there when he was needed. He became very angry with his priest in Lugano and said, "You did not work well." And he said, "You have not been here when you was needed." So I relied on Metropolitan Hilarion, whom I knew from 93. He was a young student in Oxford, really a boyish young man, you see, very clever. And from time to time we were in contact. And so at the end, he was the only one who, when he was needed, was there. And then the Patriarch called me to Moscow, and in his cathedral I was received in the Orthodox Church, Russian Church. And I'm happy with this. And I did not convert out of romanticism or because I imagined that it was only a congregation of saints, living saints, you see. In my youth, I had already a lot of Orthodox friends, later Russian friends too. They never made a mystery of the weak human weaknesses which you encounter everywhere. No? And so this is human. I'm not the judge. Christ is the only judge. And I never regretted it. I never regretted that I became a monk, though I paid a very high price because my family, my father especially, would not allow me to do so. I had to fight for it for 3 years, and I could not enter immediately. But as I often say, God does not make errors. So it was indeed during these 3 years that I became acquainted with the Orthodox Church in Greece. And yes, that is a whole chapter. I was 21 years old, a young, handsome, elegant German student of theology. Nothing seemed to indicate that this was a future monk. He was not yet in a monastery because he was not allowed to do. In those times, it was 21. Today is 18. And so God does not make errors. I became, during 2 months, acquainted with the Orthodox Church, with its liturgy, its monasticism, and I made only excellent experiences, I must say. And there were no Catholic churches, so I went every Sunday to the Orthodox Church of the village, where it was a big group of students, and the parish priest, Father Jacobos, Epitropos of the Metropolitan of Mytilene, was a very kind person, and he treated me with honors which are only due to bishops. You see, the little entrance with the gospel, he brought me the gospel to venerate it. That is not for a simple layman. It was not even a clergy, it was just a student. And I met a saintly monk, an old archimandrite, proigumenos, and through him I became acquainted. He was a hierondas. I didn't know this in those times, of course. I became indirectly acquainted with one of his spiritual sons, the Metropolitan Jacobus of Mytilene. And when I made my monastic vows in the monastery, Benedictine monastery, he sent me, unfortunately I don't wear it anymore. He sent me a schema with analavos, with Epanukalima, Fjorn and belt and everything Zoni. And he said explicitly, this is the small schema. So, as I had never seen any schema, of course, I would not wear it in the monastery. But a couple of years later, I visited Greece again, and I told this story to nuns, Greek nuns. I said, no, Father, this is the megalos schema. It's not a small one. So I did not want to hear it at all. I think it was a prophetic sign, and I have still here. It is in good. There you see, with the analavos, these chords. And later I received officially, he sent it by post, like a letter, you see, or parcel. Later I received from my metropolitan the tonsure in the Veliki schema, the Mekere schema. Yes. This is the only thing which is important to me. Not the fact that I am an archimandrite, that I'm an igumen, that the patriarch awarded me with 2 crosses. It's quite complicated to wear them. No. This monastic schema, this is the most important. Yes. And this was, how do you say? It's an embroidery by a nun who became later Orthodox too, and who lives as a hermit too in Belgium. I have several, but now I wear this one. Yes, I started as a monk. I have seen the funeral of a starets whom I knew in Russia, starets Ilya, and we have only no other decorations. No? The anderi, the mantia, of course, the schema, and then this is covered. You cannot see it anymore. It's very, very impressive, I must say. That's the way I want to finish my days. And to rejoin my beloved brother. Because he said during his lifetime that God knitted us together with a double
thread.
Yes.
It seems that your life is a story of many threads and many places being woven together outside of time. That God then finds you in a certain place ultimately.
Yes. We are living, I feel myself living in the eternal presence of God. God is not linked to time and space. No. More and more, you see, little by little, I'm vanishing. I'm still quite vivid, let's say. My mind, I did not yet lose my mind, no? But who knows what comes next. After Easter, I had a breakdown, a collapse, circulatory collapse, yes. I thought that was the end.
I actually sensed that when it happened to you. I felt it.
That was a warning, maybe. But it was not yet my hour. Yeah. I will tell you to finish one of his miracles, you see. And I hope this will happen to me too. Here in Ticino, there was a young man whom we did not know. Nobody knew him, of our friends and so on. Andrea, the father of 5 children. The last one was still in the cradle as a baby, who was brought to Lausanne to make a liver transplantation. But when they opened him, they became aware that he had cancer too. So it was useless. And friends of Raphael and myself, Catholic friends, they heard about, they didn't know him, but they heard about, and they sent him one of these photos. Andrea never heard about Raphael. He was dead already for years. Then Andrea said that he established, that is his words, he established a relationship with Raphael. Imagine this as ever you want. And that during the night, Raphael came and to visit him and entered him and put all his inner organs out on the table in good order. And then he put them back. Here, immediately our friend said, he will heal him. He saved him. Yes, that's what he did, but not his body, which was destined to death. Then Andrea was brought back to Ticino, here, to Lugano, to die. And then after, my friends went to meet him, to become acquainted with him. And one day he said, Raphael came again to visit me. And said, okay, now I will go to the hospital to hear myself. What is this? Raphael visited me. He was waiting for me, though he did not ask for my visit. He said, I was waiting for you, Father. He was in horrible condition to see, and he took my hand and he shuddered at, oh my God, he will die now. My hands, no? And then he calmed down. He said, Father Raphael came again to visit me, but everything was covered with black fabric. What does that mean? Quite clear, but I didn't want to
say anything.
Yes, terrify him. And then he brought me out of my body and showed me everything. We know this. But to be sure, I said, the whole Ticino. No, he said, the whole world. And then he brought me back. What does that mean? Of course, he showed him once this creation, this world, and which he had to leave now. He was very well assisted. I didn't meet him anymore. very well assisted by his family, and he became very weak and humble and accepted his terrible destiny, father of 5 young children. But while he was in the hospital, his wife, with 2 or 3 of the children, visited me here. And we went to our little chapel, and I fall on my knees and I prayed aloud and asked God to heal Andrea if it is his will. And when we left the chapel, she said, yes, if it is God's will. But more important than the healing of the body is the healing of the soul. Strange. Probably he was quite ill. His soul was quite ill. Anyway, Andrea became very meek, humble, accepted his death. And then, what then happened, we cannot know for sure, because the last days of his life he was in a coma. But I dare to imagine that in the hour, the moment of his death, Raphael visited him for the 3rd time, took him by his hand and brought him to a better world. That's what I hope for myself.
Let it be blessed. Amen. Brother Raphael, inatagma tulgos.
Diafon, Kyriou,
Pateranimo. Kyriou.
Isul Christe Deisimas. Yes.
Amen.
Okay, dear brother.